Chapter 3. This is only the beginning. Max threw on an old sweater and went to the kitchen, trying not to make any sudden movements. Not because he was afraid, but because the morning had already gone off script. The ghost followed him, or rather, moved along, without steps, without sound, yet somehow strictly along Max's trajectory, like a well-mannered guest unwilling to peek into other people's rooms without permission. The kitchen greeted them honestly and without embellishment. A small table, 2 mugs, a gas stove that should have been cleaned a long time ago, a windowsill cluttered with jars containing something dried, suspiciously herbal, and definitely not from a supermarket. John looked around slowly. Modest, he said after a pause. But at least it's clean. That's a rare combination. I try. Max muttered, opening a cabinet. Want some tea? Yeah. John raised an eyebrow. You don't drink coffee? I don't. Why? Because I want to live to old age without hand tremors and hatred toward humanity. John smirked. A bold goal. Max took out the kettle and filled it with water. This isn't regular tea, he added, as if apologizing. Street. John Esvot. St. John's what? It's an herb. Of course, John nodded. In my youth, people drank herbs too, usually because there was no other choice. Max glanced at the jars. My mom collects them, says it's good for the nerves. I sympathize with your mother, John said, examining the windowsill. If she decided you needed it. Muck snorted. He put the kettle on, took out 2 mugs, and automatically placed one in front of the chair where no one was sitting. He froze, looked at the mug, then at John. And you even, drink? He asked hesitantly. Sometimes, John replied, but not the way you imagine. Great, Max sighed. Then just symbolically, he poured the tea. The aroma of St. John's wort immediately filled the kitchen. Warm, slightly bitter, homey. Max carefully pushed the mug closer to John. Here. John looked at it with interest, then reached out his hand. His hand passed through the mug. The mug, encountering no resistance from reality, tilted, caught the edge of the table, and fell to the floor with a dull thud. Tea spread across the floor in a dark puddle. They both looked down. Well, Max said after a pause, at least there's no carpet. You're reacting very calmly, John observed. I'm just tired of being surprised, Max replied. And it's my mom's tea. I have plenty of it. And if anything, she'll bring more. John slowly shifted his gaze from the puddle to his hand. He looked at his palm, clenched his fingers, unclenched them, then turned toward the window. Snow was falling slowly outside. Large flakes, silent, almost lazy. John froze. Interesting, he said. What? Max asked, wiping the floor with a towel. The snow, John said. I haven't seen it in a long time. He looked more closely. Where are we? Max straightened up. In Russia. A pause. In Russia? John repeated. Yes. John looked at the snow again, then at the kitchen, then at the puddle of tea that Max had almost wiped away. So, he said slowly, I passed through the mug. Yes. And felt nothing. And I am now in Russia, he continued. Although I don't recall planning a trip here. Muck shrugged. Life rarely goes according to plan. John smirked, but the smile came out strange, not ironic, but thoughtful. He looked at his hand again. Curious, he said quietly. It seems I really am dead. Welcome to the obvious, Max said. Want some tea? This time without the mug. John didn't respond immediately. Then he raised his eyes. Tell me, please. He hesitated, which was unusual for him. When did I die? Max looked at him carefully. Are you sure you want to know that? No, yo no replied, but I suppose there's no avoiding that question now. The snow outside kept falling. Max wiped up the puddle of tea with an old kitchen towel, the one that had long since been designated for situations like this, and tossed it onto the radiator to dry. The ghost watched the process in silence with mild curiosity, as if studying a ritual unfamiliar to him. I think I just tried to offer tea to a dead man, Max said thoughtfully. If there's a ranking of the most ridiculous mornings somewhere, mine is definitely in the top 3. You're not the first, the old man replied calmly, and not the last. He approached the window. Snow was falling slowly beyond the glass. Large, lazy, windless flakes. The kind of snow that doesn't fall for urgency, but for contemplation. It's beautiful, he said. Where are we? Russia, Max replied. The Urals. Not exactly the postcard version, but it is what it is. The ghost froze. Russia, he repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. Curious. I have never been here. He paused, then suddenly looked at Max more closely. You said dead. Much stenched. Well, technically, yes. So, the ghost continued, still looking out the window. I didn't quite make it. There was no tragedy in his voice. Rather, the businesslike interest of a man checking final result. Excuse me, Max asked cautiously. I was planning on 100, Rockefeller said. It was a beautiful, round number, convenient for taking stock. He turned around. Tell me, when did I die? Muck swallowed. For some reason, this question felt heavier than the ghost in his kitchen. He hesitated, 1937. The month, May. The day, Muck blinked in surprise. The 23rd. Rockefeller nodded slowly. 97, he said. So I was 3 years short. He grew thoughtful, as if calculating the percentage of lost profit. Annoying, he added at last, but not catastrophic. A pause hung in the air. And, Max scratched the back of his head. How were you buried? The question was awkward. One of those things you don't ask in normal life. But normal life, apparently, had temporarily left the chat. Calmly, Rockefeller replied, without a circus, no golden coffin. I would not have approved, he smirked. Money should work, even after death, at least as an example. Were there many people? Enough, but I requested no pomp. Funerals are for the living, not the dead. He paused. Where? Cleveland. Lakeview Cemetery. Rockefeller nodded again, now with satisfaction. A good place. Quiet. I chose it myself. He looked out the window again. The snow kept falling. So, he finally said, I've been dead for almost 90 years. Max couldn't help but smirk. If it comforts you, you're still very famous. People still remember you, study you, criticize you, quote you. That is normal, Rockefeller replied. The bad ones are forgotten faster. He turned to Max and, for the first time that morning, smiled. Not ghost-like, but almost human. Well then, he said, it seems I have 3 years left. What do you mean? Max asked, confused. To 100, Rockefeller clarified. I do not like unfinished goals. Max looked at the ghost, then at the damp spot on the floor, then back at the ghost. Do you realize, he said quietly, that this is now my problem? Of course, the ghost replied calmly. That is precisely why I am here. Max placed a frying pan on the stove. There were eggs. Bread too. Despite everything, the world still allowed breakfast. That was oddly reassuring. He deliberately did everything slowly. Cracked an egg, watched the yolk spread, added salt, turned on the extractor fan. The smell was the most ordinary, domestic morning. The kind of smell life has when it hasn't completely gone off the rails yet. Rockefeller stood by the table, watching. You continue to eat, he observed. What choice do I have? Much muttered. If I stop, that would be really suspicious. He sat down and bit into the bread, and then the phone rang. Max flinched as if the sound had been a gunshot. He looked at the screen. Dima, just what I needed, he whispered, and, throwing a quick glance at the ghost, pressed the phone to his ear. So, master of the occult sciences, came a cheerful voice from the speaker. How was yesterday's Sabbath? Did you summon Rockefeller's soul in the end? Or did he get stuck at the tax office? Muck swallowed. It was fine, he said cautiously. We had a laugh. Told you. Yeah, your medium is amazing. What was that thing she said? Direct upload of thoughts from the astral plane. Max nodded automatically, forgetting he couldn't be seen. Yeah, something like that. Meanwhile, Rockefeller stepped closer. He was looking at the phone with genuine interest, his head slightly tilted. You are now speaking, he said quietly, with someone not present in the room. Max raised a finger, asking for silence. Wait, he hissed. Max, are you even alive over there? Dima continued. You sound off. I'm making breakfast. Max replied quickly. Everything's fine. Alone. Alone, he lied, immediately feeling like an idiot. All right, Dima snorted. If you start hearing voices, call me. I know an excellent doctor. Very funny, Max said and hung up. He placed the phone on the table and exhaled as if he had just crossed a minefield. That was close, he said. Interesting, Rockefeller said, looking at the device. What is it? A phone, Max replied automatically. A smartphone. It has no wires, Rockefeller observed. And you spoke into it, and it responded. Yes. Where is your interlocutor? Not here. How far? Kilometers 20. Maybe more. Rockefeller fell into thought. So, he said slowly, you hold in your hand a device that transmits a human voice over distance, without wires, instantly. Well, yes. And this is available to everyone. Muck shrugged. Almost. Even to me. Rockefeller looked at the phone as if it were not a piece of plastic, but a gold ingot. In my time, he said quietly, people would have killed for such an opportunity. They still do, Max remarked darkly. The reasons have just changed. Rockefeller smirked. Will you show me how it works? Max looked at the ghost, then at his eggs, then back at the phone. Of course, he said. Why not show a dead billionaire a 15,000 ruble smartphone? He held out the device. Careful, it's the only one. Do not worry, Rockefeller replied. I have always treated promising assets with care. Muck smiled involuntarily and suddenly realized if the ghost was becoming interested in technology, things were about to get much more interesting. Max placed the laptop on the table and opened the lid. The screen lit up with a soft glow. Rockefeller froze. He didn't step back, didn't look surprised. He froze like a man who instinctively understood that this was not a toy. Is this an extension of the phone? He asked. More like its older brother, Max replied. Or its brain. He hesitated. A computer. The screen loaded. Icons, windows, cursor. Rockefeller leaned closer, though he could see perfectly well. Physical distance no longer mattered to him. Does it calculate? He asked. Yes, quickly, faster than any human. Does it make mistakes? Only if a human made one first. Rockefeller nodded. He liked that. What can it do? Max opened a spreadsheet. For example, accounting, income, expenses, forecasts. He began typing, and the numbers obediently lined up in columns. Rockefeller watched without blinking. How many people would it take to do this manually? He asked. Dozens, sometimes hundreds. And here, one. Rockefeller slowly straightened. So, he said. A weak man with this device becomes stronger than a strong man without it. Muck schmirked. Well, more or less. No, Rockefeller shook his head. Not more or less. Exactly so. He looked at the screen again. And information? Any. News, markets, research, data. Everything is here. Max opened a browser and entered a query. The page loaded instantly. Rockefeller narrowed his eyes. This is available to everyone? Yes. Then, he said after a pause, most people are poor by their own fault. Moksh flinched. The phrase landed with unexpected precision. You're cruel, he said. No, Rockefeller replied calmly. I'm a realist. He paused. You said you know how to work with this? I used to, Max answered. I'm a programmer. Was. Why did you stop? Moksh shrugged. People. Rockefeller studied him carefully. Funny, he said. I built an empire precisely because I learned to tolerate people. A pause. And I considered it the most expensive part of the business. He looked back at the computer. With a tool like this, he added quietly, I would be more dangerous than I ever was. Muck swallowed. To whom? Rockefeller looked at him, and for the first time did not smile. To everyone who hesitates. How Rockefeller would have viewed cryptocurrency, honestly. 1. Bitcoin wouldn't have frightened him. He had seen bank runs, crashes, empty money, currencies without backing. To him, Bitcoin wouldn't be magic, but money based not on gold or the state, but on trust in a system. That he would understand. 2. He would have immediately asked 3 questions. 1. Who issues it? 2. Who controls it? 3. Who is responsible? And upon hearing the answers, no one, and no one, he would fall silent and then say something very short and precise. 3. His core thought. Rockefeller wouldn't have become a crypto enthusiast. He would have said, as a tool, interesting, as a foundation of wealth, dangerous, as an object of speculation, inevitable. And his key phrase, almost guaranteed, money without a center of gravity doesn't fall. It scatters. Max opened a browser. This is the internet, he said. There's almost everything here. Rockefeller watched as pages replaced one another, numbers running, charts shifting, news streaming by. These are markets? He asked. Yes, stock markets, shares, indices. They operate constantly. Almost. Who oversees them? Regulators, governments, banks. Rockefeller nodded. That was familiar. Max opened another chart, sharp, jagged. And this, he hesitated, is cryptocurrency. Bitcoin. Who issues it? Rockefeller asked immediately. No one. The state. No. A bank. No. Rockefeller narrowed his eyes. Then who is responsible when everything collapses? No one, Max admitted honestly. Silence followed. Curious, Rockefeller finally said. Very convenient for those who prefer not to be responsible. He looked at the chart where the price surged and plunged. This isn't currency, he said. It's faith. Muck schmirked. That's what they say about everything these days. No, Rockefeller shook his head. That's what they want to be said about everything. He paused. Faith is good for churches. For markets, it's dangerous. But people make money, Max objected. On what? Growth. Then they're waiting for the next person to believe more strongly. Max said nothing. I've seen this before, Rockefeller continued. Railroads, telegraph, oil. Every time, the same story. He looked at Max. The difference is, back then, there was a product beneath the bubble. And here, an algorithm and hope. Rockefeller leaned closer to the screen. This may exist, he said, and it will, but I wouldn't build a house on it. At most, a tent. He straightened up. If you want to earn, he added, go where people are in pain, bored, and in need. In crypto, that's where people are interested. Muksh laughed quietly. So what would you do? I would study it. Invest. No. Why? Rockefeller looked at him calmly. I never invested in what I couldn't control. He turned his gaze back to the screen. But observing is essential. Things like this rarely disappear without consequences. Rockefeller watched the screen for a while longer as the charts continued living their nervous lives, then slowly shifted his gaze to Max. And who are you here? He asked. The question sounded calm, without pressure, almost absent-minded, and that was exactly why it hit harder than any accusation. What do you mean? Max tried to smile. A user? No. Rockefeller shook his head. There are no users in a market. He paused. You're either a supplier, an intermediary, or raw material. Muksh frowned. Raw material? People who don't understand their role, Rockefeller replied, are always raw material. Their time, attention, money, processed by others. Max opened his mouth to argue, but found no words. Do you work? Rockefeller asked. Yes. For yourself, formally. In practice, for Muksh hesitated. Client. Then you sell hours. Rockefeller nodded. Not a system, not a product. Hours. Max sank into the chair. I'm not poor, he said. I'm average. Rockefeller raised an eyebrow slightly. Average is someone poor who hasn't realized it. Muksh grimashed. I have an education, skills, a computer, internet, and it's not enough, Max said quietly. Rockefeller looked at him attentively, without judgment, like a doctor. You live alone, he said. Yes. You have no debts. Almost. You have time. Too much. Rockefeller nodded. That's the perfect starting position, he said. For whom? For someone ready to take responsibility. Muksh smirked. I've been ready for 40 years. No, Rockefeller replied gently. You've been waiting for permission for 40 years. Muksh froze. You're smart, he continued, but you don't believe you have the right to results. I'm just a realist. No, you're a cautious idealist. Rockefeller took a step forward. You believe in rituals, he said, because they don't require decisions. That's not true. It is. They allow you to hope without acting. Max clenched his fingers. And you? He asked sharply. Could you do it now? Without money, without connections? Rockefeller didn't answer immediately. I would start, he finally said, by stopping seeing myself as small. He looked straight at Max. You're not poor in money. Then in what? In the right to influence. The room fell silent. Even the computer seemed to work more carefully. And do you know what's most dangerous? Rockefeller added. What? You've almost made peace with it. Max closed his eyes. And for the first time in a long while, he understood. This wasn't a ghost who came to torment him. It was someone who saw right through him.